I think we're good to go. All right, welcome everybody to the January 17th meeting of the Nantucket Historical Commission. Let me call the meeting to order at 10:02 a.m. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, so all votes will be taken via roll call. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. So here in the room, we have George Butterworth.
Here.
And then on Zoom, we have Abby DeMolina.
Here.
Diane Coons. Diane, can you hear us? We'll move on to Sarah McLean.
Hello.
Great.
I don't see Angus.
No Angus and no comment at the moment, but hopefully they'll join us. On the agenda today, I would like to make, and then of course staff, we have Holly Backus. And then we have members of the public joining us as well here in the room. So on the agenda today, I would like, since we have staff of the Land Bank and Natural Resources Department here to discuss the Francis Street Beach improvement project, I would like to move that up to first on the agenda.
After the staff update or before?
I was thinking of that first. But
I'm just asking so I can make it correct on the notes, not for any other reason.
That's fine.
okay, great. I think that needs to be a motion.
So I'll make a motion to move it's the Francis Street item on the agenda to first.
For a second.
Second.
Great. So Abby, on your motion?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Diane? Might not have.
Rita, we have four
you hear
for
me?
quorum, I think.
Yes, we can hear you, Diane.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
How do you vote on the motion?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And it looks like Angus is joining too.
Yes, fantastic. Okay. Hi, Angus, welcome. And I vote yes on that motion as well. So we're just going to move the Francis Street Beach item up to first on our agenda. So Leah and Vince and Rachel, would you like to join them? So for members of the commission, if you weren't able to attend one of the information sessions that were held earlier this week, Angus had suggested putting this on our agenda for us to have a sort of a brief discussion and a FYI and look at the different options that are being considered right now by the work group that is working on this project. But then Leah and Rachel and Vince were kind enough to come and join us at this meeting to give us a little more information. So would you guys like to take it away?
Great. Yeah, I'll start and we'll just jump in when we want to. Thank you for having us today. I'm Leah Hill. I'm the town's coastal resilience coordinator and one of the project managers for this project, which is a collaboration with the town, the land bank, and Remain. So there is a Washington Street collaborative work group that consists of 2 select board members, 2 land bank commissioners, and then 1 NPEDC commissioner as well. And so that work group is really to kind of steer this project as well as lots of town and land bank staff. So the goals that are on the screen today are environmental goals, social goals, and operational goals. I'm not going to read through all of them, but really the main purpose of this project is to reduce flood risk on Washington Street. So really the corner of Washington Street and Francis Street, that floods quite frequently. Easy Street floods first during coastal storms. This area floods second. Holly, if you can go to the next, I might have you kind of just scroll through. You can, next slide. Okay, so up here are the 2 alternatives that we are looking at. And to put it kind of into some context, there's two flood pathways that come through Francis Street Beach. And this property is, a section of it is land bank, a section is town. So the idea is to create a elevated dune system that has a flood wall embedded within it so that you would not really be able to see it. And there would be dune plantings, native vegetation planted around it. So by having this flood barrier embedded, that would cut off those two flood pathways that come right into the road and cause, lots of trouble. As you all know, this is a major corridor to get to and from downtown, all our goods and services. On the land side, we're looking at two land bank parcels to manage stormwater. So that's from precipitation. And then we're also looking at the Salt Marsh parking lot, which the town owns, to see what can we do there to help manage stormwater as well. And kind of just, spruce up that parking lot area. So these are conceptual. There will be the work group on Friday will decide which one to move forward with to 30% design. And then that's when we'll go to the HDC, the Conservation Commission, all of the regulatory bodies to look at that. Because right now it's just, a lot of this can change as we go through the permitting process. But this is just to get an idea of what we could do in the area to reduce flood risk. And there are two different alternatives. So does Rachel or Vince, do you guys want to explain the two alternatives that I'm talking a lot about?
I'm sure, I'm
Okay.
happy to jump in for a little while. So basically on the left, you have alternative one, which has been nicknamed the dune swoop. And before I go into explaining that exact alternative, the one thing that I want to emphasize, what Leah just touched on this, is that these are very conceptual designs. There is basically so much that can change. And going forward, as she said, we're not even to 30% design yet. And one of the biggest questions for these different alternatives is regarding functionality, right? How effective are they at reducing these flood pathways? And the thought is that they're similar in their capacity, but that's one of the biggest questions going forward, is how to maximize the functionality of this design, whatever it ends up being. So the dune swoop is alternative one, basically rises from Washington Street. And this is a big component of this, is it rises at a slow pace, right? So the goal is to have it be accessible. So to meet the required grades for accessibility up to elevation 8. And when we say elevation 8, it's very important to note that this is actually probably only around 4 feet above the existing ground. So Vince and some other people from Natural Resources Department went out to Washington Street and actually put in a series of posts that are in this area right now that show you, and with flagging, that show you exactly kind of what the height of the dune system with the embedded seawall would be. So basically the path rises up to reach elevation 8, which again is about 4 feet high. And you can go check it out yourself if you're interested. And then slopes back down on the other side. There are additional paths and access ways, as you can see in the dune swoop. There's also a set of stairs. Other things to be considered in this area are that the amount of beach, which is something we've had a lot of question about, is sort of the amount of beach and vegetation depicted here is really just artistry at some level, and not to be taken as, one design has significantly more beach or significantly more vegetation. But again, the goal, as you can see, is that the dune swoop area would be vegetated. And so that will be minimizing the view of this boardwalk system. Similarly, the seawall, you know, the goal is to not have it be exposed, but to have it embedded within a dune. The beach overlook design is similar in the same way that we're trying to achieve elevation 8. It is ADA compliant with a slope up, slope down mechanism and an embedded seawall. It's a different design in, you know, aesthetics and some differences in the way the dune swoop has benches that are basically kind of placed right on the edge, and the beach overlook has a little bit more of a gathering space with benches that are placed on the boardwalk directly. They both have you know, some level of different egress and access, right? So there's multiple ways to get up and over. And we have not gotten to any discussion of materials. So that's actually something that's completely unknown at this point. And, you know, so therefore, one of the other questions we had was about the dune swoop and the beach overlook was, you know, are there differences in the gray versus the sort of light gray or white and the dune swoop? And really those materials are to be determined at this point. And again, we're really focused on design and functionality at this point. So I think that adds a little bit of additional information. We are interested in retaining the kayak usage. So that's being considered. And
one of the points on the kayak usage, it has to stay close to the position it's in at the moment because this is divided between the town property and the land bank property, and they have their agreement with the town.
Yeah.
So it has to stay on a particular side. It's also worth mentioning, and I hate to steal thunder on this because it was Leah and the land bank did this. There was a marvelous set of public presentations where somewhere in the region of 110, 20 something.
yes,
125.
125 people attended in 2 events on Monday and Wednesday this week. And both of these alternatives were presented to get public feedback and get public opinion on these things. There seems to have been a bit of a mild preference for the idea that this might be a boardwalk. Again, we have not discussed materials. It's something that the public brought up. Again, we were looking at that as one of the possibilities, but that was one of the things that seemed to maybe be something that the public had a bit of a weak preference for, if I could state it like that. We also tried to see which might be the public preference, and they were about the same. There was, again, what would you say, a mild, a very weak preference for the dune swoop in the public aesthetic for more functionality and how people saw it. But again, hard to put numbers to these things other than, you know, what we saw in front of us.
Yeah, and both of those meetings were recorded. So Holly, if you can just go to the website that I brought up. The project has a website on the town's webpage.
For a second. I'm just doing their questionnaire right now.
oh, great, fantastic, thank you.
Yeah, so on the Francis Street Beach Improvement Project, there is a recording that's from the Monday night. And both of the meetings were identical. So the recording's there, and then there's a feedback survey that should take about 5 or 10 minutes. That feedback survey is going to be open until January 21st at 8 p.m. And then we'll take the feedback that we got during the meetings from the survey, and that will be compiled and presented to the work group next Friday for when they decide which alternative to move forward with.
Awesome.
Can I just add one
Yeah.
thing too? You know, as Vince was talking about weak preferences, it was interesting how even the feedback was. We used a really neat tool called the Mentimeter, and people provided basically a rank as to how they felt about the 2 alternatives. And I wasn't expecting it to be as even as it was, but it really was. It's, you know, it was a weak preference for the dune swoop. But it was interesting to be able to receive that feedback.
And ask a question or make a statement?
Yes, please, Diane.
I was asked whether I liked project 1 or 2. And my thought was, I've lived in this house at the end of Fayette Street, which goes directly down to the beach for 52 years. So I've seen a lot of what's happened on the water, and a lot of it was created by a blocked pipe going out to the harbor. So when the rain came, it couldn't go out the flood because that drain was blocked. When my son-in-law mother lived down at the corner, he would come and clean it out and it would empty. But my most thought was, I liked that first one because it was not straight across as much as the second one was. And I thought when water coming in at the thing, if it hit at different areas as the water came in, it would reduce, it tended to reduce the strength of the movement. Is that true, or is that just in my mind?
If I might. So in terms of the drainage in this area, we've been working with the newly created stormwater department within the sewer department, and they have become integrally involved in the development of this project so that we can fix the drainage issues that are in this area. There's currently 2 outfall pipes in this area. One of the ideas that we've been working through with the stormwater people that is now feeding directly into this project is to rehab the pipes that are in this area, where needed, have backflow preventers to stop water coming back up, so that when the harbour water is so high that the harbour water wouldn't go underneath through a pipe and then flood the road. But then,
Which currently happens,
so that we can actually fix this, have the drainage correctly done. And you can see there's 2 things in the bottom of the screen on future stormwater improvements in that on the corner of Francis Street between Meader and Francis. That's a land bank property. They have 2 areas for stormwater improvement, and then the town parking lot improvements may also, we're still working on it, may also make stormwater function better, so that we can soak stormwater to groundwater as much as possible, to take the edge off just the stormwater and then stop effectively harbour water getting onto the road.
And reduce maybe the impervious surface.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be awesome. Right. It's a sea of asphalt.
Well, what we can do to fix it, we will. So it's a multi-targeted approach whereby we're straight up attempting to cut off harbour water getting in onto the road, which is the main influx, and then for the rainfall that flows down towards this area, give that water somewhere to go to.
Commissioners, does anybody have any questions or comments or?
Angus, hand read.
Oh, Angus, yeah.
Since I've already seen this, I'm not going to take a lot of time to talk. But one thing that that I had noticed before and didn't really get a chance to address was the area where the kayaks are used. That was the one point in both plans there wasn't really a path to. Was that intentional to avoid that sort of southern access, where there is now one in the north?
If you don't mind. So this is something that came up through the public feedback on Monday night and Wednesday morning as well. The possibility that there will be a desire line that would go in from Washington Street Extension down to the boat ramp. So it's a possibility, and it's something that we're looking to correct. Now, again, as Rachel and Leah have already said, this is kind of an artist rendering, not a design yet. So we haven't even reached the 30% design. So there's plenty scope to include elements like that, so that we don't end up with desire paths.
Thank you. I wasn't necessarily advocating for it. I was just curious. And part of what I liked about the swoop, the dune swoop, was that it diversified the dumping out of people in the middle and at the north, whereas the second plan seemed like they both sort of ended in the middle. But I'll leave it up to the rest of you to comment.
I agree with you.
Colin, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to the commission, because y'all don't have the benefit of that. I was able to meet with the project group and gave some of my recommendations to the group before the public meetings, which I thought were awesome. I attended the one on Monday. Really wanted to see what the public was thinking about it and all that. My personal, I guess maybe bias preference would have been the dune swoop. So I'm interested in the fact that there's a kind of a mix on that. But I do think it's very important that you all have stressed that this is only at 30% and that there's definitely going to be some changes to it. And eventually it will go to the HDC for them to opine on the materials. But I think this is a great collaboration between the land bank and the town, and something that's needed. And I think too, from a I guess preservation perspective and setting perspective, our natural identity is part of our National Historic Landmark designation, which is very unique from other locations around the country. Normally it's strictly buildings, streetscapes, that's it, but our natural environment is part of our streetscapes in that setting part. And so I think that visual quality that you see right now, even now that those buildings have kind of been moved, you see straight out, you see the harbor. I think what's important that whichever project is chosen, you're still going to have that feeling. You're still going to have that natural setting, which I think is very important. But to be able to work with our stormwater department, and that's been my kind of beef, is making sure that we're actually fixing some of the old antiquated issues of our stormwater while we're actually preparing for sea level rise and storm surge. So it's a great event, and I'm very excited that and appreciate you guys being here today for the commission to see these. So thank you.
Welcome, Clement. Thanks for joining.
Oh, thank you, Rita. Sorry to be so late.
Oh, no worries. We're note for the minutes if you've arrived. Sarah or George or Abby, did you have any thoughts?
No, I kind of just wanted to second what Holly said. Like, I think there's been a lot of great work. I know Vince and Leah well. I was on the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee for a while, so I know a lot of hard work has gone into this. I think it's great that there was so much public interest and feedback, and I'm really excited to see how this works out. I also appreciate Angus bringing up, some of those kind of pertinent points and just making sure that we're involved as this goes forward. But I think this is a really good opportunity, as Holly pointed out, to have a really good partnership between a lot of different areas within the town and kind of show how collaboration really can pay off. That's it.
I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I don't feel like I am knowledgeable enough to have a strong preference between the two plans, but.
Sarah?
Yeah, I'll second that. I don't spend a lot of time there other than driving by, and I guess my only comment, and I understand that obviously these aren't the plans, but it does appear that it's very important to leave enough of the beach accessible for people coming down to sit, and also the kayaking. And one of the plans looks like there's kind of more space available for that. Obviously, we know that the landscape changes radically over time. And I think it's kind of too early. It's great that they came to us this early, but as we found with like the bike path and Milestone Road, that until there's like more of a finalized plan, it's hard to extrapolate on like what we think should be. So, but I think it's great so far.
So it sounds like not too strong of a preference for either one among the board. I think everyone's, I agree. I think they're both very attractive. It looks to me more like the beach overlook sort of fits in with the existing built environment and that context of like sort of a more built up in town feel. But I mean, the dune swoop is also very attractive and appealing, I think, for the public. So I don't know if it would be helpful for you as we go forward with the vote to, you don't need anything from us. Right?
Not at this point, because it's so
Yeah.
conceptual.
Yes. Okay.
But yeah, we appreciate everyone's feedback, and if you have time and you wanna do the survey so that we can
Right,
have everything together, that would be helpful.
Great.
Yeah, and I just think it's great to have everyone know that this is happening and, this is where we're at in the process and you'll be seeing it again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that's all.
We'll send the
Thanks
link out
again.
for the survey to
Yeah,
everybody.
email that and-
Cool, thank
If
you.
you haven't
Yep.
taken it.
Yep, I already did.
I'm including the link in the notes also.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Abby.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Oh, yeah. Just.
Okay.
Mm. I gotta get out of this. There it goes.
Okay, great. So
Thank you.
we can go, so back to our agenda. We sort of moving that up. We skipped over public comment. I think. Any public comment? Mayor? Am I the only public? I believe you are. Thank you all. Bye. Okay, so being hearing no public comment, we can move on to the staff update.
I was trying to get the agenda up, sorry,
Oh,
it went away.
You want
Yeah, so I did. Well, first of all, I just wanted to mention that we do have our newer staff member, I should say, are back. Which is gonna be great. It can be a transition. So eventually I'll be able to have more time for this commission. But I'm still intimately involved with the HTC, which obviously I think as I think Mary sees on a weekly basis, my comments are invaluable to the commission, so I'm gonna continue to do that, but less of the administrative part of it. And then I did want to mention too that the NHA had invited a couple of us. Mary and Rita were there the other night to meet the Jeffrey and Elizabeth Taylor Verney Fellow from the NHA. Michael, I cannot pronounce his last. Okay. Chirapa, and his wife, Elizabeth Watson, who's a preservation planner, and actually is one of the authors of this book, The Guide to Rural Conservation, which was a publication made for the National Trust for Historic. I just got it in the mail. I was, yeah, when I knew that I was gonna meet her, I was like, oh, I need to look up that book. So I'm very excited to dive into it, but I'm also gonna meet with her next week, because it seems like there's a lot of similarities, and he's here to do some research on Ginny's
the Andrews.
the Andrews, yes. So very excited. It's nice to be able to, talk to other people and see other things and similarities. And she's also a Penn grad from back in the 70s. So that was also really cool. So that's just my update for now. And hopefully I'll be able to have some more updates for the commission next month.
Holly, can you confirm those names? It went very fast.
Oh, yeah. Michael. His last name is CHIARAPPA. And Elizabeth Watson. And sorry, guys, I need to get into the commission agenda. But that's it for my staff update.
Could you just also maybe add about 89 Easton that they received?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. And a really cool update. And I think this is, thank you for that reminder. I received an email after you all opined on the latest historic tax credit update application for 89 Easton Street. The project, he's an architectural historian, I believe, Brian from Epsilon, and emailed me back, and he obviously thanks the commission, but he also said that they were able to get awarded this back in August round. They just were notified. So that's a good thing, because here lately, the Massachusetts Historical Commission hasn't really looked at Nantucket's applications too favorably. So that was awesome. And hopefully we'll be able to see that continue. So, yeah.
Great news.
Yes.
Alrighty, so thank you, Holly. Next on the agenda is a commission discussion of minimum maintenance of contributing structures related to 10 New Whale Street and 5 Candle Street, which were both in front of the HDC this past Tuesday. Angus, did you want to maybe update us all on how that went and where things stand?
So, the way it went was that there is still there's a push to move towards demolition for the 10 New Whale, whereas 5 Candle Street, their engineer, the National Grid's engineer, has said that it's the building is in a good enough condition to I'm hesitating to say restore because I'm not sure, what sort of rehabilitation would happen there, but to bring it up to meet the minimum standards. There were basically the HDC was holding the 10 New Whale Street minimum maintenance issues or response till we spoke with the town council and to see what our options are, because the National Grid's engineer, we had delayed the meeting a month to give them time for their engineer to take a look. And all of you would get more than my paraphrasing here if you watched that part of the meeting. It's the very beginning of the meeting, so you don't have to wade through a whole bunch of video. But long and short of it, their engineer was saying that the only thing that could be done with this building was to demolish it, which was discouraging, of course. Outside of that, I've spoken with Glenn Borisman, who's been restoring the old candle factory, which is the main part of the Whaling Museum. And this was a month ago that we looked at it together, and he, from a distance, he was saying, I can see what's happening with this and why, and it's totally repairable. So the hope is that town council will advise us to or empower us to seek an independent, more preservation-minded engineer to take another look at it and see, is this building savable or not? Hope that helps.
Thank you. So I'm not sure at this point if anyone would like to have any more discussion, or it seems to me at this point we can sort of continue keeping an eye on what happens here, and if we can be a resource at all to the HDC potentially, as as Angus mentioned, there has been a new application for demolition filed for 10 New Whale Street.
Angus, do you know when you're supposed to hear from town council?
I can probably.
No, I don't. I think I think more than this project, these two properties specifically, excuse me, I think if we can be of any assistance in our role of educating and advising the town on our historic resources, is I'm seeing the minimum maintenance bylaw on the screen, and the HTC had a special meeting yesterday just to that where this came up, and it's not something that the HTC has dealt with a lot, and I think that advice from preservationists, maybe Mass Historical or someone who has law and preservation a background would be able to help us and the HTC, maybe CLG, to understand this better and know how we can best utilize it as a tool for preservation.
That, Angus, that's a great idea. I wonder if we should see if we should reach out to like other CLGs, and maybe I'm just thinking somewhere like New Bedford, where they might, in this example of like the brick structure, have had examples, and like you said, have someone who has not just like preservation but the law background that might be able to help us. Because just thinking about, and I'm just thinking about this specific building, but you know, maybe reaching out to some of our fellow CLGs to see if they've had this type of situation as well is definitely worth exploring.
Abby, as you say that, I'm thinking about our attorneys with for the town with the wind Heritage Partners, and I wonder if maybe they would have any sort of
Yeah, that's a great idea. Holly,
insight.
do you have relationship with Heritage? Like, do you think that would be worthy? I think, Angus, I think that's a really good idea.
I can do an inquiry, yeah, and see where that goes.
Okay.
But I think, you know, there's having a preservation expertise, because that's the hardest part to really grasp, is it was very, very clear at the meeting on Tuesday that the structural engineer that did the report is a structural engineer with no preservation background and not understanding that these type of structures can be adapted, but also be repaired, and that demolition is not the end all be all. And I did remind the commission that with the first application, because that's the whole reason why we're here today, you know, why they're at this point, is they came with a demolition application. They were vehemently against it. They didn't say, they didn't deny the application. They wanted to see the applicant come back with some sort of way of reusing that structure. So now we're kind of back to square one again. And I try to remind the commission, you all did not want that. So it would be nice for, you know, I don't, maybe I could reach out to Glenn too and see if he had some time to give some insight. But I think that the education component is missing from, you know, what can be done with this structure, and not just here. Well, this is what, you know, from a structural perspective. But you know, there's definitely resources out there, and I do think that, you know, there's probably some other CLGs, New Bedford, for instance. I'm connected with Fall River as well. The chair of their historical commission is actually a friend and former classmate of mine at Roger Williams. They just became a CLG, so they're yes, very excited about that. So anyway, there are definitely connections, and I could definitely reach out to CHP if there's some connections there. The preservation world's small.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I just had a comment, which is, I think National Grid has probably been the owner of this property for about 30 years.
Yep.
During which time they've probably done absolutely nothing to help the property. And then they say, oh, wow, it's beyond fixing. The building's about 100 years old. About a third of its life probably was under National Grid. It just seems a classic example of demolition by neglect. You do absolutely nothing to preserve the property and then just say, oh, the place is shot, we have to tear it down. And it's just like a built-in conflict of interest when you own a property you don't want and are just looking for a way to do it in.
May I?
Holly, sorry,
That's-
Tara, did you want to go first? I just had
Yeah,
a,
Sarah, since you haven't spoken.
I just wanted to say that we have a fair amount of very experienced preservation-minded people, craftsmen on the island, who are well-versed in masonry and historic masonry and restoration. And I know Colin Evans does a lot with the NHA building, both at the bottom of Main Street and also I can't remember the one, right across from the Stop and Shop, in terms of, restoration, repair, and refurbishment. We've Penn Austin is another one who certainly could look at the building in its current condition. Water is not your friend, as we know. So for them, and I just, I read what was on the Current this morning, and, the water infiltration from above could have been addressed immediately, and staved off some of this. But mortar in and of itself is a sacrificial part of a building, and it's supposed to be that. And so, for National Grid, we knew that they were going to come back and say it's too expensive to repair and we don't want anything to do with it because they're not in the business of preservation work. But as we stated before, this would be an ideal tax credit project if someone were to come in, because anyone would want to be able to, use those tax credits for refurbishment and rehabilitation and maybe mixed use or something else like that. But we do have good resources on this island specifically for this instance.
Yes, that's a great point.
Can I?
I just
Add-
wanted to mention on Sarah's point is, Colin was actually one of the ones I was thinking about as well. But I think one thing that needs to be very clear is, in order for these professionals to even give an opinion, they have to get permission from the property owner to go on the property to actually do a inspection of it. So there's that. It would be something that, I don't know the legalities of that and how it would work. So there's a lot of unknowns from that regard. And I think a lot of it would have to be up to National Grid to actually be welcoming for something like that to happen.
Well, to that point, Madam Chair, maybe it's a situation where the HDC would require or request that someone from the outside be allowed on site to be able to inspect and have a second opinion. And hopefully the HDC would have teeth enough to do that. And I guess that's the question for legal counsel.
yes. Angus, I'm sure you would be supportive of that motion, right?
Can I add 5 cents worth, please?
Yes, thank you, Diane, please.
Many years ago, when I was on the HDC, we established a way of working that said, if you were bringing a building under inspection for demo, that we had to have an inspector not paid for by the applicant. And that's what we followed for a while. They had to bring in a clear inspector. And that included, when they did that, of being able to go into the building. And we adopted that way back. And then we sort of, I guess, lost track of it. But we did do it once and it was approved, and that's what we did. And whether it cost the electric company $6 million to bring it back, that is what they are required to do. We don't restore buildings if we can afford it. If you let a building go to hell, then and you're told to restore it, you do it. I'm tired of listening to the electric company saying that they can't afford to do it. They knew what they were doing. The electric company is established here before it became so big and involved, and they were responsible to maintain that building. I want to know what the condition was like when they took it over and go from there. I don't think they should walk away saying that we can't afford to do it because it's a classic building. It's part of the area that you see when you're down at the harbor. It becomes part of our historic background, and it's what we need to keep. And to tear it down because they can't afford to do it is insulting. So, that's my opinion. My opinion.
Thank you, Diane. No, it's good to know about that past policy. Angus, I saw your hand, then I'll go to Abby and then Mary Bergman here. So Angus, please.
Oh, thank you. Diane, I so appreciate you bringing your HDC hat to the conversation. It seems like the current board hasn't really dealt with this minimum maintenance issuing of citation or violation so far. And so, but as to the repair or how much it would cost, nobody has given any numbers of or estimates of what that would be. The conversation from National Grid really has been about it not being restorable and it not being safe and needing to be demolished. So I think that all of you would benefit from looking at the meeting video because it's the electric company employee engineer is, as Holly had mentioned, it's clear that it's a structural engineer who really doesn't have a background in preservation, and an employee of the who's from National Grid who really makes a case for demolition by neglect. Just talking about their not having been a clear idea of what the building would be used for and not maintaining it as a result of that. Because why put money into something that may or may not go away? And it seemed like it was more about it eventually being demolished. So, yeah, thank you.
And then business constructed on it. So.
Abby?
Yeah, I know that the HDC had previously issued a demolition order for this property. Do we know why? That might be Holly. Is that a question for you?
A demolition order? I don't know if I understand the question.
No, that originally they had approved the building for demolition years ago, but the time ran out, and so this is not the first
30
one.
30 years ago. And COA is only good for 3 years. And you know, in this regard, there's no, I mean, there's one thing from a previous board upholding a previous board's determination when a COA expires. There's another thing when it's 30 years, and you also got to realize that our period of significance changed. So that's something to also consider. It wasn't, you know, there's even surveys from the 88, 89 effort for structures that you would have thought were contributing, but at the time they weren't. So again, it's all about that as well. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, no, I mean, I wasn't advocating for it. I was just asking how the process was that they agreed to do it before. But obviously, as you pointed out, time passes, it enters a period of significance, all of those things. I was just kind of devil's advocate because they might use that as a reason. Just saying.
I think it has already been submitted as part of their reason, quite frankly.
Yeah. No, thank you. Mary?
Mary Bergman, Nantucket Preservation Trust. Just pulling up a couple of other ideas for you all relating to this conversation. I think Holly's point about the changing period of significance is important, our changing understanding of the ways in which we look at the history of working people in this country, how that has evolved. When Nantucket's when the HDC was first established in 55, we were really looking at, as you all know, we were looking at the whaling era, and we're looking at so much beyond that now. In part because of the sort of development that went down right at that wharf, which is why it is so fascinating that this building is now contentious, because the revitalization of the wharfs is integral to Nantucket's landmark status in 66 and a subsequent subsequent national attention that was received by Walter Beinecke as he redeveloped Nantucket. And this is nothing new to anyone who is in this room or on this screen, but just going on the record for anybody who may be watching. I think it's also important. So Holly, without naming any names, I did speak with a couple craftspeople about the potential of restoring this. And the answer was, you can restore anything with enough time and money. So there's that. I'm looking at Appendix C too of building with Nantucket in mind. I think sometimes I find myself frustrated and I wish we were a Chapter 40C HDC so we could understand how this commission and the HDC could better work together. And I think there'd be a clearer answer around demolition delay and around who has the authority to go onto what property. I'm reminded of a historical commission in Wellfleet where the commission actually went onto the property to walk through the building because the structural engineer hired by the applicant had told them that the building could not be restored. That was not true. I think if you look at Appendix C, and if we're going to go with the HDC as the ultimate authority and the HDC is the authority to set its own policies and procedures, Angus, it might be worth looking at that second paragraph on page 163, applicant to study necessary evidence and determining the evidence of circumstances specified under standards for approval. The commission may require such additional documentation, information, or evidence as it determines to be necessary. I think Chair Steve Welch has a lot of leeway there, and maybe somebody here will point that out to him that whatever evidence it determines to be necessary. I think that could mean that that's the way to get onto that property with an independent engineer. If that becomes a matter of funding, I think there's other funding sources that this commission could look to, or the HDC could look to. I would also urge maybe this commission should ask the HDC if they want to put this on as a protected or significant structure. I think that word should be used soon in order to get some of these larger procedure or protections in place.
Thank you. Sure.
Thanks, Mary, for that. That's really helpful. I do want to say I had reached out to Jen Doherty just to see if there was some sort of guidance or advice that she would be able to offer the HDC. And
Yes.
Sorry, it seemed like the screen paused for a second. And so she said, without really knowing the bylaw, her thoughts were that it would be it would probably be reasonable for National Grid to have someone come, a representative from the HDC engineer or preservation engineer or somebody to confirm the findings that they had, and that it would probably be in their interest to do that anyway, so that there would be a finding. On the previous screen, there was that section or part C under the minimum maintenance, and it just keeps coming back around to the HDC making the decision about this. I feel like the HDC does have power in this situation. It's just the HDC, I think, just has a little bit of a learning curve with it.
Right, they have the authority. It's just a question of exercising it. Essentially. So I'm not sure if we need to take any action here. I do think, Mary's point to this paragraph on the screen about the HDC having the authority to require whatever evidence it determines to be necessary. Hopefully that's something that can be pointed out perhaps by Holly as staff of both commissions, or Angus, since you sit on both. And we will pay attention. Is there anything anybody else would like to add before we move on? Thank you all. Great. So the next on the agenda was the certified local government MOU. So at our meeting in December, we discussed most of our discussion was centered around the last segment of the MOU and whether or not we were required to have, if you keep scrolling down, Holly, the last paragraph, this language notwithstanding anything to the contrary, we impact our interpretation. We had taken a vote to send this to town council and see if they thought that language was necessary or not. I know, obviously with the holidays and everything, did that? No, okay, great. So I think if everyone agrees that we would like to have town council take a look at it to determine specifically with that language, if that's necessary, we can continue this until February.
Mhm.
Okay, and just for everyone's, I did include, in the packet, this language had been in there previously for like Appendix A, the, mission statement of the HCC, and then just because this came up as part of our discussion last month, this the MHC's guide for local historical commissions, I just included this in the packet just for everyone's reference. So if you haven't had a chance to take a look at that document, it is worthwhile, I think.
On the note of anything to do with town council, and this is really for both commissions too, there is a process, unfortunately. So I have to go through the planning director, and the planning director has to request it to the town manager, and then the town manager has to kind of justify whether or not it's something. So there is a unfortunate process, I guess, fortunate or unfortunate process, but I will work on that.
Okay, great. Thank you, Holly.
What they're doing in the yard?
Okay, maybe we should.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, great. So we'll continue that to February. Next on the agenda was the African Meeting House 200th anniversary celebration that took place about 2 weeks ago. I was unfortunately not able to attend, but I think Abby, you were there.
I was there. It was a really good event. It was super interesting. The director of the African American History Museum, which is both Boston and Nantucket, and sorry, I'm off camera, I'm feeding my baby, so multitasking, if you will. She spoke, and also what was really interesting is a woman gave like historic background on the building and all the historic figures that kind of passed through it, which I thought was really great, and was something that I thought if we had like when we're doing our surveys and things like that, if we can add where we have it, Holly, if we know certain figures, and I know we do it with a lot of the buildings, which is just like their private homes, so it's like if we know a historic figure lived there, but the fact that like with these more like public buildings, if we're able to note like all of these historic figures that pass through, I think it's great on emphasizing like the significance of it's not just like the style and everything of the building, but also that historic like events and figures pass through these places. It was just really interesting. Personally, I didn't know all of the people, like Frederick Douglass had spoken there type of thing, like, hearing that was just great to realize like how much history had been in that one space. So it was a really nice event, and then they had a little luncheon afterward. I know it was pretty well attended, like the room was full. I know Niles from NHA was there, and as I said, the African American history team was there, and I'd have to look. I can actually, Holly, if you want, I can give you I have the packet from, they had like a little flyer that was, but it was a really good event, and worthy to go, and like I said, I just thought it would be a nice historic thing to attend, so. yeah, I don't know if there's anything I can add.
Yeah, and I'm not sure with the MAH if they're planning any additional events maybe throughout the year to continue with that 200th anniversary celebration, but it could be something we could, and we at the NHC could look at to help publicize or just to be involved.
That would be awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I mean, they did host earlier, Holly, I know George and Angus and Mary and Rita, I think you guys were all there when they hosted PIN. Like, it's great that they're like really good collaborators, so I think continuing that relationship is very important.
Yes, for sure.
Agreed. Thank you for representing us there.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. I had one question to that point about the last time we were all meeting there. Was there any mention of the survey work that that Penn's doing there, or any sort of signups for history or any sort of?
No, but that's a really good idea that maybe that's something we could do going forward, especially if they are hosting other events, is like, be like, by the way, if you're interested in the history, we're willing to survey, because we might be able to partner with them on stuff going forward. And also, I would think that they have access to certain historic grants as well. Right, Holly, I would think.
Yeah, they do. They do.
So
I know that they've been, not only did they obviously allow us to have that open house for the project, but they have been included on kind of the, I guess, workings and research of the New Guinea, Monomoy, West Monomoy area as well. Both obviously University of Florida, but UMass Boston, because they have a anthropology / archaeology component to bring that into the mix as well. So I will be touching base with Clary here shortly about where they stand on stuff. So
Great.
Yep.
Oh, I almost forgot, the house next door, that's where they held the reception. They had the completely restored stove in the kitchen. I don't know, I hadn't seen it before, so it's also just interesting because it looks like they did a lot of hard work on restoring the building, and it looked like it had been completed fairly recently. So also worth visiting if you haven't seen it.
Yes, the Boston Higginbotham House, which was completed in 2020, and it won MPT's Architectural Preservation Award. And there's a video walkthrough tour with Marsha Fader on the MPT YouTube channel if you want to check it out.
Nice. Yeah, it was the first time I'd been in there, and it looked great. So
yeah, it's very impressive. And they did a really cool, I would say, like style of restoration where instead of picking one sort of historic point to restore the house to, there's sort of one room that's like an 18th century style room, one that's 19th century, the kitchen is 20th century. And so it sort of tells the story of the evolution of the house through how they chose to restore it. It was a really cool project.
Awesome. They did a good job. And I think also important to note, if you're ever one of those people that like to just look online and see what we have available for surveys, they both have Form Bs, preservation restrictions. So if you see, instead of the triangles that I've always mentioned on the GIS, if you see a star, that has all their information once you click on that. So it's pretty cool to learn even bit more information.
Yeah. Well, great. Thanks, Abby. So we can move on. There's a new national natural landmark on Nantucket, the Nantucket Barrier Beach and Wildlife Refuge. Holly, you had wanted this to be included in the
Yes,
agenda.
National Park Service, I want to say sent it. I was going to look to see if you all, I think even the current
Yeah, they covered the
natural landmarks. Yes, and I want to say it made their top, but this is the division of the National Park Service. And there it is. Nantucket.
Oh, I don't think you're sharing. But...
Oh, I'm not. All right, sorry. Sorry, guys.
It almost was there, it was.
There it is. So here's the National Park Service website. This is on their national natural landmarks which my understanding, it's not, this program, is not that old. It's not as long as the NHL, from 66, but, there you go. There's Nantucket, and CO2, being the newest site designated. Yeah, I was happy to see it, but at the same time, it would have been nice to have some more of a involvement, or at least reached out and say, hey, this is something that we're, that's happening. But I think the trustees, are the ones who really spearheaded, but I think this is awesome. And my understanding from talking to Elizabeth this week is that it's really, I mean, there are places that she's been known, like for instance, in the Carolinas, on the coast, that really emulate its natural beauty with hardly any man-made, involvement, if you will. And she said it's a really high standard to get. So I thought this was pretty neat. And it would be nice to see how that collaboration works. I was actually going to reach out to a couple of people in National Park Service, or even if Jen, if she knew. But I just thought it was pretty neat to bring up to the commission if you all didn't see it on the news. So.
Yeah, great. It's always exciting to see more federal recognition of Nantucket, and what's unique, so unique and special about the island here, and obviously land, natural resources and land conservation can complement so well the protection of our historic resources as well. Pretty cool. Yeah.
Now, with this designation, is there any special protection or anything having to do with resilience? I know that is really sort of our barrier to the enclosing the harbor, and certainly the north shore along the harbor. Is there anything that's tied to that, or is it just a designation in itself, and there wouldn't be any additional protection or anything with it?
Mm-hmm. Mary has some information. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary Burton, Nantucket Preservation Trust. I don't know that I have any more information, but I was just thinking about something like what could this commission do, or what could the historic groups do? And I just keep thinking, I think of the map of CO2, the way it's platted out, and some sort of reminder of the fact that, yes, this is this incredible natural resource now. But if you think of like the Cedar, not Cedar Camp. Cedar Camp is full of buildings.
Oh, yeah.
And gee, I can tell you all about that, but no, more like the lodge that was there and the water slide. And there's a very cool little period of time where CO2 was developed, and then it was going to be further developed. The Craigs, the Atkinsons, and the Nishalls, and maybe some talking with NCF about sort of like what was going to happen.
Yeah,
could be an interesting, I don't know what,
could be a very interesting public program and opportunity for collaboration between the NHC, Conservation Foundation, the trustees, perhaps. So
yeah. I mean, it's always so difficult to. It's hard sometimes to talk about preservation in those natural landscapes because the structures are not there, right? But to talk about what had been there, what still exists. Anyway. Yeah, I guess I'm just looking for reasons to drive my truck out to my state. That would be sanctioned by my work.
That's awesome. Yeah. And also to know, through all the resiliency functions that I've at least been involved with for the town, I've always reminded those people that, they're not only is that spit of land owned by the trustees and NCF, but you also have, and I think there might be a couple of land banks floating in there somewhere, but there's also private property owners, and there's private structures out there that are historic, that people, maintain, and I know one very intimately. And it's a treasure. It's something that, if somebody wanted to build out there now, that's not going to happen. But the fact that there's history there, I personally have family history there. There's an old map somewhere too that shows where, in I think it's 1892, when there was a hurricane or hurricane, God, what hurricane was that? I can't remember. And the hull over broke.
Mhm.
And my great-great-grandfather actually sailed his catboat through it. At that time, and just to think about the importance from a natural perspective of what that barrier beach is, but also what it is culturally, because I think people realize or sometimes forget that it's not just a built environment, it's not just, it's kind of everything in between and how those merge together. And I've always remind people that, like I said earlier, that is part of our national identity. It's not just the built environment. So it's pretty neat to see.
Yeah, it is. And also something that comes to mind with this designation is a Great Point Light, which has been a topic of conversation for this board in the past, and that is, you know, on property that's owned by the federal government at the very, very tip of Great Point. And obviously this designation as a National Historic Landmark includes that part of the island, and I don't think it doesn't seem to have any you know, make any changes to that site, but I guess it's just something for us to be keeping in mind as well.
Yeah. Does that, Rita, as Clement, does that mean that, because I know when we were talking about restoring Great Point, they all said, well, it's not a historic landmark, it's not old enough. It was rebuilt and whenever it was rebuilt. So maybe that could be a way to get around that and have somebody come out and look at it and see what could be done.
Know about that. I mean, it would be,
Yeah.
it just from the fact that it's, I think both of the NNL and NHL, which are both federal programs under the National Park Service, are, you know, they are separate on their own, but they might have some sort of benefit together, which is one thing I want to reach out to MHC to find out, you know, what information's out there on it. But on the point of the building itself, you know, I think that we've already kind of opined on that quite a bit. So, but you never know.
It will be a contributing structure in about another 10 years. It's about 40 years old.
Yeah, that's true. 1986, so.
I know.
Yes, okay, we can move on. Thank you, Holly, for bringing, you know, adding that to the agenda, and bringing that up. So next on the agenda is commission goals. We have the goal document as it stands from December. Abby, do you have any?
Yeah, I can share a more updated version.
Perfect.
It's okay. Here. Hold on. Sorry, it took me a second to get this. So, Holly, we're still waiting for feedback, right? On the
So as it stands right now, MHC has provided their comments. PAL has our comments. PAL is in the process of combining everything together to revise as needed, and then they'll be providing them back to us. So I'm assuming more or less just a checks and balances to make sure that those comments were addressed, and that MHC is satisfied with it before we move forward. So yes, we're waiting.
okay. Funding programs, I think we don't have an update. The CPC grant, at our last meeting, we talked about digitizing the deeds, like that's on the radar. I think that's still ongoing. The sewer forest main project. Holly, I know you're still working with David. The MPS grants.
There are
Holly-
grants that have been, I think you all, if you're on the listserv thing, there are grants at the federal level that are out there right now. Really and truly, the Paul Braun one, if we ever wanted to do that, would really have to come from town administration and their direction on that, but they are aware of them that are rolling all the time, and that we are eligible for those type of grants for our town-owned historic resources. And to kind of pinpoint into, that's why we've listed those in our survey plan as important structures, not in a area, because the town owns historic structures across the entire NHL. And that's why we pinpoint that into and the wind fund survey project, which I would love to get underway soon.
Yes, and just on that point, I know the National Trust for Historic Preservation has a couple
Yes.
grants that are, I think, upcoming deadlines in March and April for a couple different programs for. I think there's one for interior work of historic properties, one for exterior, and if there are any town-owned historic resources that have sort of easily identifiable, projects that need to happen, perhaps that would be something that, I mean, they're obviously very competitive grants,
Yeah.
but it could be something worth applying for. So, yeah, maybe we could talk about that a little before our February meeting to try and see if there are things identifiable that we could discuss those potential grant applications for. Okay, great.
That'd be great. Next one is not great. Permit was issued for the new wind farm on December 20th. But the new administration that is coming in on Monday has vowed to stop all federal wind projects. So I guess stay tuned on that. The MOU we just talked about, Holly outlined, she has to go through the process to get town council to review. Rita, you just talked about 89 Eastern Street. Good news is that one actually got approved, which is great. Ongoing, we had talked about updating Building with Nantucket in Mind. Continuing education, there were a bunch of trainings in I think there were some in December, and if we have any that come up, we'll send them out, but I don't think we had any right now, which usually like right as the year kicks off, they.
Yeah, Abby, there is one coming up on January 30th, I believe, with
Yes,
the
NAPC.
the National Alliance of Preservation Commissions about historic surveys and surveying historic properties. So there was an email, I think maybe Holly, if you could circulate that amongst the commission. I'm registered for it. And as members of the alliance, we can attend for free. There's a
Yes.
coupon code. So
If you're not getting those emails directly, like what you're receiving, please let me know. Send me an email, say, Holly, I'm not receiving NAPC emails. Because again, we have a membership. Not only was that membership paid for previously, but it was also paid for as a CLG from MHC. So let me know if you're not receiving those emails directly from NAPC.
great.
All right, so I just put that in there. Community education, we're still hoping to partner with some of the other organizations within the community. The historic structure disaster resiliency conservation workshop. I think we would still like to do this maybe this spring. And as I said, we have ongoing collaborations with our groups. I know we had just mentioned PIN a little earlier, but I think those are just ongoing. Is there anything else you guys want me to add?
No, I think
I did want to, this kind of goes on training, but I had sent everybody yesterday this new brief. I say new, it was from, I think June of this year or last year, 2024. But I thought this was very important because there's a lot of topics that are coming up. For instance, the stretch energy code, those type of things. Made sure Lauren, our energy coordinator, was aware of this. But building codes for historic existing buildings and planning for maximizing their application. And if you're not familiar with the National Park Service briefs, I would highly encourage you to take a look at them. There's all sorts of different briefs on different aspects of historic structures. So,
yeah. Great, thank you. So then moving on from the goals, we have approval of minutes of the December 20th, 2024 meeting. Did everybody have a chance to look those over as they appeared in the packet? Does anyone have any issues, or would anyone like to move approval?
I'll move to approve.
Second,
Great, so motion to approve the December 20th, 2024 minutes made by Angus, seconded by George. Angus, on your motion?
Aye.
George,
aye.
Clement,
Aye.
Abby?
Aye, sorry.
No, thank you. Diane?
Aye.
Thank you. Sarah?
Aye.
Thank you. And I vote aye as well, so unanimous approval. Is there any other business? Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Okay, so made by George, seconded by Clement. George, on your motion?
Aye.
Clement?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Abby? Back to
Aye.
Abby. Diane? Oh, okay. Aye from Abby. Diane?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next month. Let's see, it'll be February 21st.
Bye, everybody. Have a good weekend.
Bye.